Yeah.
You're live.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Conservation and Heritage Advisory Committee. Before we kick things off, I'd like to welcome a new member, James Boone, from the Historic Buildings Trust. James, welcome. I don't know whether you want to say a word or two about yourself.
I can do very briefly. Chris will know me because I spent quite a few years working at Latham's. About 5 years ago, I set up my own architect's practice up in Cromford, and I helped Derbyshire Historic Buildings Trust. I'm their technical advisor, so have quite a lot of involvement in projects that they're doing. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, James. Apologies, I've got one from Ian Goodwin.
That's all right.
Lindsay, anybody else?
Not that
Okay, thank you. Welcome to, we have an observer at the back, so welcome to you. You're going to sit for the duration, as I understand it, so we'll be aware of that. Who do you represent, sorry?
Just a member of the public.
Oh, okay.
Just like myself.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah, well,
I was going to suggest, Chair, if it was a particular item, we deal with that.
I've already asked that question. But
Yeah,
he's happy.
okay, that's
He's
fine.
happy to
Yeah.
see how
Yeah.
proceedings go for
Yeah,
all the schemes. So
that's
Yeah.
fine.
jolly good. Okay. I don't think there are any late items to introduce. Do we have any declarations of interest from anybody? No. All good. Thank you. That takes us on to the minutes of the previous meeting. 12th of October. You've had those and seen those. And we have a proposer, please, to confirm that there is a true record. Printed justice made. Thanks, Max. You've also had the list of items determined since the last meeting. If there are any queries or clarifications, we'll move on. Likewise, applications not being considered, you've seen the list. Hopefully that's clear. Takes us on to the applications to be considered this afternoon. So we're starting off with 99 Friday. Chloe, if you would please.
certainly. This is a list of building application and full application. 99 Highgate. It's a grade 2 star list of building in Highgate Conservation Area. The applications are for a change of use from commercial business and service to C1 as a guest house, associated alterations to the building. So there are a number of proposals. The drawings show that there's no external alteration shown. And I'm just going to run through the slides quickly. So that's the building on Highgate next to Highgate Bridge. Obviously there's a number of changes in terms of subdivision and bathroom, hogs and kitchens, which you've seen online, the details. So that's the ground floor. Here's the photographs of the ground floor. Second floor, the single all on the so and in terms of the top floor, there's one unit to the right hand side of the top left plan. So that's the existing and proposed in purple pie. And there's photographs from the head of statement showing the proportions and the detailing within this 25 Georgian building. To the other side of that that plan, we've got to that second floor part. And also, once again, sort of looking at doorways, some subdivision within the core area, and the creation of 2 new wings. So that's a very brief through. You have seen these all online. There are some further details, including those bathroom pods, etc., online, which you will have seen. And I would just like to add that the architect on hearing that was coming here today, so wanted me to say that way forward is still being discussed with historic England and local officers, and the applicant and agents are aware that the scheme that is in front of you today will not be moving forward in its current layout, but they wish to have your views at this point, so to assist with things moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. So handsome building, I think dating from 1750. Thank you.
Need no much.
Which is badged as a guest house, but I think it's fundamentally serviced apartments. Yeah, you know, that kind of thing. So change of use from commercial to apartments, which involves a bit of subdivision, as you can see. But comments, please. Yeah, Chris.
Yes. Well, first of all, that was an interesting update. The applicants are obviously rethinking things a bit, which is encouraging. And it's good that there are no alterations to the external appearance of the building.
Great.
And it's a real classic. It shouldn't be of the external. And I think you know I can live with some of the alterations that are being proposed. In that it's sometimes necessary to block a doorway or whatever, and if it's done in a certain way and you can still see where that used to be, maybe you know, then that's probably just the natural progression of use of the building. But the subdivision of some of the rooms seems to be unnecessary. In particular, room 6, you know, is being made into 3 separate rooms.
That's the one on the ground floor at the back.
Yes, it's the
Going to that slide.
I'm not quite sure what colour it is really, but maybe yeah, that left rear one there. I mean, you know, that for example is you know, being 3 separate rooms, and whilst there might be a necessity to have some sort of screening for or some sort of pod for the washing and toilet facilities, it's not really necessary to subdivide the bed and lounge areas these days, you know, and so I think there's an unnecessary subdivision happening. That is a detrimental aspect of the scheme that we should try and encourage them to either not do or do in different ways, or and certainly less. Wasn't really sure about what they're doing with the secondary staircase. It's being treated. I don't think you mentioned that. They did. Missed what was happening. Will that be retained as
Yes,
it's retained
as a second? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that says 2 second staircase to the floor above. So it's for unit 3 only.
So it's that made ways unnecessary subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I agree with Chris on all that. I mean, it was built as an unusual subject because it's a townhouse with a landed family in the county, and it acted as such for nearly a century. So it's important that its plan form is kept and it reads as what it was. So I think dividing up that back room, for instance, is not a good thing. And if a good thing for blocking doors perhaps is to retain the door and just break up behind it on both sides, so that there is a blind door rather than just paper over it, so to speak.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think, you know, in a way, it's better to have people living in it than having it as offices.
I agree.
that particular subdivision of that unit is curious because the one immediately in front is just a studio.
Yeah,
It's essentially open to,
I mean, and the other thing about that house is it's got the finest Georgian plasterwork in Derby after St Helens has. And it's really very good.
it's
I agree with all.
2-star status.
2-star, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. The interior detail is such that it is very special.
it is.
There is a complete lack of detail in terms of the blocking up of openings and the relationship to the existing elements, the skirtings, etc. There's this a floating floor being proposed in there, and whilst they're given details on what type of floating floor it is, it shows no relationship to the skirtings and the architraves and so forth. And the architraves in this building are particularly interesting. The doors, where they're blocking up openings, they do make a note about the doors remaining in place. There is a section where the main stairway goes up to I think it's the first floor landing. They've actually blocked off part of that landing with a bathroom. Just pull that up, which actually destroys the integrity of that landing completely. So I think that needs some serious replanning in that respect.
Floor above too.
And the floor above,
The
yes.
landing
Yeah.
being truncated, isn't it?
Take away the light from that, and a beautiful stairway, beautiful land.
Yeah.
So we need more detail and to take on board those comments in terms of the planning of the spaces.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you for that. So I think we're lodging an objection at this stage, subject to clarification on a number of points of detail and the principle of subdivision. I think we're questioning this is a very significant building. It's going to star status tells us a lot about that. I think there's a comprehensive heritage assessment in the submission. I think the extent of subdivision is a step too far, so we would urge the applicant to look at ensuring that the original plan form of the building can be read as clearly as possible.
Chair, can I make one more comment as far as the pods are concerned for the WC accommodation?
Mhm.
I think it's important that the detail that they provided on that is a very bland plasterboard box. These need to appear as a piece of furnishing, as if it were a separate entity completely, in contrast to the rest of the building. So I think that ought to be noted for their further detail.
Yeah, okay. So there's a comment about subdivision and there's a comment about a plea for further detail. There's not enough detail really. It tells the impact of raised floors, which are potentially problematic in terms of their impact on skirtings and architraves and everything else. So we would want to see more detail on that, and the pods as described need to be as elegant and you need to make they need to ensure they don't detract from the original spaces, obviously not affect plaster mouldings, etc. So more detail. Sounds like they're on the case with revisiting their current scheme anyway, so hopefully, Lindsay, that's clear and that can get fed back. So thank you for that. That takes us on to 35 to 37 Marketplace. 22.
You're viewing this building on Marketplace. This building is 35 to 36. The building is not long-term sign. It is not a listing, but the all of the so a planning application has been submitted the change in use of the second and third floors from office to 8 bedroom. Just to note that a planning application has been submitted, but an accompanying listed building application has not, and you'll have noticed this when you looked at it. So there is very lightweight. Light touch heritage sites of significance, historic plans, etc. Knowing that there's some limited, some information still missing, but you've seen these plans. So here's the existing one. The proposal is the second and third floor, which does include some subdivision, creation of 3 shower rooms, an extended kitchen, details on drainage and response flues, fire partitioning, or sound insulation, etc. And in the non-listed part of the which non-response flues, which might impact on the exterior of the building. So obviously there's been some discussion, and the applicant agent is aware of the need for us to build an application for a building application, but we haven't submitted one. Talking to the case officer, we do have to determine full application, although we don't post the building application. Obviously, no works could or should occur to the building without listed building consent. So I just wanted to explain where we were with this one. Changes, which also would be looked at in more detail under listed building application. So that's a summary.
Okay, thanks, Chloe. So the building on the left, essentially grade 2 listed, the bit on the right not listed. There's no there's a sort of thin heritage assessment with some information, but not a huge amount in relation to the listed building, certainly. And the application for planning permission has been validated already in the absence of a listed building application, so that needs to come in and catch up. So that's not there yet, which makes this tricky. But comments, please.
Should we postpone this one in view of that until we've got correct and adequate information?
Any other comments?
Yeah, it's a good point, Max, but I think we have the scheme in front of us. I think we're obliged to comment on what we've got now, which is actually not a very well conceived scheme. I have doubts as to whether the survey is accurate as well, because there are a few peculiarities in terms of the stairway. But there is a complete lack of detail, lack of consideration of the existing spaces. It just seems to be a very poorly conceived scheme.
Had we had any information from the heritage statement, we'd have known, for instance, that it was built, the left-hand side was built between 1828 and 1836 as a pub called the Cross Keys, and was later the offices of the Derbyshire Advertiser, who built the top story on in 1909, which is approximately the same date as the next door shop, which was Parr's Butchers by Naylor and Sale, somewhere around 1909. So there you are, that's the history.
Abundance of knowledge you are, Max. I always learn from
It helps us decide what to do. Do something horrible to it. And after all, these people get paid to asked to write these heritage supplements, statements, and if they don't help us, it's a bloody nuisance, to be honest. Don't mean it that.
Even though it's only, I say only a planning application, then you would still expect there to be, I mean, to stay with that, forgetting the fact we've not got the listed buildings. So, I mean, it seems a bit of a strange approach, really, by the owners. you know, the two really need to be working together, don't they? Because whilst they could establish principle of the convent, then when it comes to the detail, you know, then it may be that the whole thing will change anyway. So it doesn't seem a very sensible approach to me, but nevertheless, that's what they've done. I suppose really, you know, perhaps I agree with Paul, though, you know, to the extent that we have got something in front of us, and I suppose we may as well, if we're able to identify a few pointers to help them to think, you know, sort of about those buildings. You know, for example, are there particular features that they should be aware of, potential fireplace and whatever, you know, and then if we point those things out, then hopefully as they work this up, build that thing into their thinking. But you know, things like existing staircase, fireplaces, and any particular features. It's a bit of an oddity, isn't it? But part of the scheme is listed, and
Yeah, it is quite unique, isn't it?
not, yeah, it's a bit of an unusual.
I don't think we'll see many of these in the future.
At the end of the day, Chair, I would think that we want to come across as being positive, you know, about encouraging a scheme, and therefore, you know, if we can assist them by identifying things that they should be doing, then I think that would be beneficial. Because when the first photograph was shown, you know, you can see there's a window that's got a board across it, and this is the marketplace. You know, this is so the building is obviously not in great use on the upper floors, and that's not a situation that we want to continue. So if we can encourage them along the route, you know, to bring forward a property sub scheme, then I'm sure that's what we would want to do. So I suggest, you know, if anybody's aware of particular aspects of the buildings that ought to give attention, let's do that now. In principle, you know, it may well be that they can come up with a satisfactory scheme.
And just for clarity, we did say, I think, that we're only concerned with the top 2 floors.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think, yeah,
Which is unused, presumably, and have been for a long time.
they're partially derelict.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I was reading through the notes on this one, the notes a couple of days ago, there was a comment about the bathroom in room 4 that was worked into the recess or something. So it said that it was, there was a comment saying that it was an unnecessary intrusion into the recess. So whether we can have a look at that. Chloe, can you help me with that? I've written my notes and
Yeah, it does ring.
yeah. And there was another concern about the impact of fire regulations and so on that hadn't been addressed, but whether that would come up this juncture, I don't know. I think was it in the heritage?
Yeah.
Was it in one of the statements?
For what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Paul.
Yeah, I would say, because by association, the building adjacent is curtilage listed, so we are concerned with that.
Yes.
But yeah, the principle still stands. If the planning officer and the planning officer will have to determine this application, whether it's before the list of building application gets submitted. I think he's emphasising that we as a committee are not happy with the scheme design. So all that's being established is a principle, and we support the principle.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
No, okay, so in terms of the summary, yes, we welcome the principle of residential development reuse in the city centre, but I think the point's been well made that with a lack of clarity coming from the heritage statement, it's just not, we're not able to assess the impact of these changes on this list. It's only fair that we ask for a fuller, I mean, they have to be proportionate, these things, but it needs to be, this document needs to tell us a good deal more about the building and its significance before we're able to assess the changes. Hopefully they can deal with that, and you know, happy to consider changes in that context. So that's but an object we can't you have to object.
Yeah.
In the meantime, so thank you. That takes us to Cathedral 1. Thanks, Craig.
You're all aware of this important location in the city. To increase the buildings and something like into the British side. You always respond to one certain the development site was subject to a planning application for the wider site of the old police station site on Broad Street. And the development consisted of a hotel, apartments, an office and commercial space, and was to be constructed across 2 phases in 2013. The scheme was approved and phase 1, the development was completed in 2016, and that consisted of 46 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, 118 bedroom hotel. The proposed development that's before you today is cited on the final part, so it's phase 2 of the extension. So you're all aware of this one because something did come before you at the pre-app stage. So you expect that's just to remind you of the site. Just a reminder of the previous schemes on the selling in 2005, a different one in 2014. So the element facing Full Street, so this was the previous. Built and hotel on the right hand side, to the bottom, obviously phase 4 is wanted into agreement. So there's generally things in relation to monitoring points. So we're familiar with the layout form of it because it came to Korea. There have been some changes which are outlined in the design access statement in relation to consultation. So this is the form application. This is the form application that's now clean. With context. Things to point out. Is obviously this comparing the approved scheme and the now proposed scheme. Obviously, there's a change in materials, but also in terms of height of stories. So the office development was 7 stories, and now it's up to 9. But obviously, the floor-to-ceiling heights are less in residential development than within the office block.
But the net effect is still a taller building.
The effect is still a taller building, and there is an analysis that we asked the applicant to provide us with, that came in today, just to clarify the exact difference in height. So I can go through that if you'd like me to.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the headlines.
The headlines, yeah. So headline way. And the difference obviously is quite tricky because they've broken it down into the approved hotel and plant. Obviously in the approved scheme that was set back. And then the approved office and plant, proposed residential, and obviously the storage, which probably covered, but obviously is the tower element on the corner of Full Street in Cathedral Green. So we've got the approved office, the difference between the approved office and the proposed residential, including the plant, is just under 1.6 metres. The difference in height between the approved office and the proposed residential, excluding the plant, is just over 4 metres. And obviously the height of the turret just short of 2 metres. So that means that it's not easy to relay, but there is a difference if you include the height of the excluding plant, including a turret of 6 metres. If you include plant, then it's 7.6 metres difference. But I have got a table here if you would like to.
Okay. To try and make that, but the difference in height between the approved building and the new is between 1.6 and 7.6, depending on which bit you're looking at any particular time. Okay, do you want to carry on, Chloe, or you?
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned, obviously the design philosophy. You've all seen the design philosophy in terms of the tower feature, the use of brickwork instead of the rendering glazing. Obviously the previous scheme curved walls and glazing, whereas this one is proposed to be red brick. And yes, it was just to point out, the difference in height and what has got approval at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. So new development, 186 apartments with amenities, residence, amenity space, gym, etc. Some landscaping associated. Access off Full Street, sort of courtyard arrangement. I guess things we need to concern ourselves with the setting of. It's just outside the conservation area, as I understand it. Cathedral Green sits in the conservation area, so you need to be thinking about impact on that, impact on the cathedral, and impact on the silk mill, and other kind of issues, key views, etc. So comment, please. Chris.
Just a couple of matters of detail. The concept of having a tower.
Mm-hmm.
On legs, in that to complement the 2 existing towers and sort of to replicate that. It's quite a good idea, but it's in execution. It's not turned out to be that, because whilst that is a tower from Full Street, it's a block from Cathedral Green. So what seemed to be a good idea hasn't materialised in the way that it could have. The permission that exists, I think, had stretched it to the limit. So I know there was debate about, well, what do you include plant machinery, don't you include plant machinery? I think my start point would be the permission that exists is the absolute maximum. If that's approved, that has gone now. But to go further from this, we know that sometimes you get a revision and then a subsequent revision and subsequent, and they're always in one direction. Is not something that we should encourage. Really, I think we should say, well, look, that was the limit, and work within that. So that was the I would like to make regarding the one of the detail. I mean, that it doesn't work very well at ground floor. The integration with the cathedral green and so on. I'm not sure how that's really working. So there's quite a lot of detail still to be dealt with, but fundamentally, though, I think the main issue, I suppose, is that the scheme is harmful to the important heritage assets in the area. That several respects, which is one of the monitoring views of the World Heritage Site itself. The cathedral tower, is it's not in due regard for that. So I can't see that supporting the scheme because the degree of harm to the significance of the assets that it's sitting near to, and the visual importance of the cell block is that view of the cell is an important aspect of its significance. So for me, I would maintain an objection.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my feeling is that the style and appearance of that building is preferable to what's been suggested previously. So if it's one or the other, the materials and the style of that to me is preferable. But the height, I fully agree with what Chris is saying. The height that was previously approved should be seen as the maximum, and commercial viability of that is not our concern. I mean, obviously, the other obvious issue is the impact on the green of a building of that height. And that as a public space, I mean, that's now going to be in shade, or so there's the impact on the green, and also the proximity, obviously, to the World Heritage Site, and the threat, really, because I mean, do we in Derby want to lose? It's a serious threat, as I understand it, to the World Heritage status, and in allowing that, are we going to jeopardise that status? I mean, Liverpool lost theirs, didn't they? And we're very embarrassed about it. So I think that's taken into consideration as well. So as it stands, unfortunately, I'm sure that I'll object.
Can I just comment on that? Yeah, I do. I mean, as someone that I am a bit of a 21st century lad, where it comes to tall buildings, and you marvel at Manchester and London how they've integrated it. But I think Sue's just hit nail on the head there with the World Heritage, and I believe when the last planning application was approved, there was the grey cloud of the is it going to impact the World Heritage status? So I do agree. You know, the preferable brickwork, I like it, and I think Chris was right about the integration of the ground floor into the green. It'd be nice just to see some clarity around that, but I think the height, of course, in this particular area, given its extreme close proximity, is a real concern. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I think certainly us three on this side feel that.
More comments, Carol?
I agree with what everybody's said, and I think as a summary, the size and the massing, I think, is inappropriate for that particular area. It's a good building in the wrong place.
Yeah. That's a great analysis. That is. Yeah.
I have something. These two, yeah. I agree with everyone here. This development, as it stands, will cause irreversible harm to the setting of the Grade 1 listed cathedral and the other listed buildings in the vicinity. It'll cause irreversible harm to the skyline of the city, especially from the east and the south. It'll cause irreversible harm to the buffer zone and of the World Heritage Site. And we, as Councillor Bonser mentioned, we had an ICOMOS dropping on us via the Secretary of State after planning consent was granted for the 17-storey tower on Phoenix Street, basically saying if this should be revisited, which it hasn't been. But if we do if Derby approves another development as intrusive as this, we're going to end up like Liverpool. This is a laughing stock of the heritage world with our World Heritage Site removed. And I can't imagine the vituperativeness of the authorities further up the Derwent, which will heap on the heads of Derby City Council for approving such a scheme. That's just a start. The other thing is that I read the heritage statement, which is the most incredible document, because instead of being an unbiased account of the heritage of the site, every point he makes is subjective. Normally, if you write a heritage statement, the justifications come in a separate section. But everything he comes out with, he then comes up with a thing like, well, the silk mill is not really that important because it was rebuilt in 1910. Instead of just saying the silk mill was built in 1717, rebuilt in 1830 and rebuilt in 1910. But it's still there. It's an important monument to our history. The whole area is a monument to the Midlands Enlightenment, because the cathedral had these wonderful Enlightenment connections. The Industrial Museum is a monument to the Enlightenment. The whole of the Derwent Vary Mills World Heritage Site is a monument to the English Enlightenment. And on the site of the building proposed, Erasmus Darwin lived. None of this is mentioned in the heritage statement. I mean, there really ought to be. Next time, if they resubmit, they ought to get proper heritage statement written, which actually conforms with the excellent template that Chloe has provided us with later on in the agenda. So I think on almost every conceivable ground, this should be unequivocally objected to. Message ends.
Okay.
So no from that.
Going straight to any comments?
Yes, I was hoping in my first go I could just sit here.
You never get away.
I think this one feels worthy of some comments. We have a previous approval here, and I think that should be the starting point of the envelope within which they will work, because I think that was already clearly pushing the boundaries of what could go on that site. I actually think the design is relatively well considered, and materials and the treatment of the facade. The tower, I kind of like what they're trying to do. I'm not 100% sure whether it's worked, but again, I'd like to commend them for that. But the fact that it's all come outside of that previous envelope of development is the key issue. I did make a note to myself. I'm sure there was and apologies because I'm sure this has cropped up before. Wasn't there a tall buildings policy in Derby? Right, we'll move on. Sorry.
Well, no, it's a very good point.
Very good point.
Yeah, because the tall buildings policy that was developed by consultation seems to have just been thrown out of the window.
Chloe, do you want to come
Yeah,
in?
and that isn't the case. Obviously, the tall building study is on the website for reference, and one can have a look at that study and look at it in relation with to all development, along with the supporting information, which includes the skyline work, Derby skyline work that was done, and of course we see that for these committee.
Sorry, I was thinking more in terms of 29-story buildings.
I'd just like to finish off on the World Heritage Site, if I may. I understand why everybody has concerns about what happened with Liverpool. I do think we have to acknowledge that we are a living, breathing valley, and so some change is potentially going to happen. Whether this height is the right change is another matter. But one of the things we've done on a few of our projects is we've actually done had a heritage impact assessment written that is specifically targeted at the ICMOS sort of way of looking at things rather than the NPPF way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And whilst that might mean that you have to do 2 heritage impact assessments, if they are going to do this, it does mean that there is some justification that as a council or a committee or anybody who has been involved in judging this can at least point at that if ICMOS come along and say, well, why did you allow that?
That's a good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Absolutely right.
Okay, thank you. Paul, and you?
Yeah, I agree with everything, particularly what James had just said. And I go back to the tower. The concept of the tower is, I think, quite a valid concept. That is not a tower, that is a block. And the articulation of the whole building is very formulaic. It doesn't need to be that formulaic. It needs dividing up into panels of readable structure. The balconies actually don't contribute a great deal, even though they've actually amended it on this current scheme. The building itself does not sit comfortably into the site. The base of the building needs grounding in a different way. Could be a contrast of materials, as is the horizontal delineation of the building. We said before on the PRIA that some intensifying of the cornicing on the building would help immensely. And I'm very disappointed that all the comments that were made previously seem to have just been ignored.
Okay, thank you all for the comments. So I think that's a resounding objection. I think fundamentally this building is too big and by definition harmful to the setting of the important listed buildings that we've talked about, the cathedral, Silt Mill and others, adverse impact on the conservation area and the World Heritage Site buffer zone. I think there are some very real concerns about the World Heritage Site status, which is extremely precious for this city, and you know, we should look after it, put simply. So without getting into detailed matters that have been discussed, I think it's too big. There's no justification for its size, by the way, in terms of narrative for the scheme and what it's responding to and what's being considered. And I think there's a valid point too about the heritage assessment and the objectivity of that, and the point about the taking a lead from you know, the ICMOS guidance and responding carefully and properly to that in coming up with a solution for what is a pretty special site. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity. This, and you know, we must make sure it's not squandered. So I think that's the message from the committee. Thanks, Lindsay. Objection.
As we would say, big welcome. A more modest scheme of sufficiently high quality.
Well, indeed, but I'm just, you know, like the vice chair, disappointed that we have had the benefit of the opportunity to comment through the pre-app
Yeah.
And we were, he gave some quite considered comments, which
Okay.
I think have been ignored.
Yes.
So that's regrettable. Okay. Takes us on to the next one. Chloe, thank you. St Werburgh's House.
Chair, just for clarity, the meeting, obviously I'm a ward councillor for Spondon, but obviously no involvement in any shape or form in the application.
Okay.
Just thought better express that.
Okay, over to you, thanks.
So as you will see online, this is a listed building application, an application at St Werburgh's House, Church Street in Spondon. This building is Grade 2 listed within a conservation area and a short distance from St Werburgh's Church. It was listed in 1977. The proposal, so I should just give a little bit of narrative. The works were halted by ourselves. I remember the public contacted us. It's not so went out. So now they have submitted a planning application and a building application. So there are some works partway through, but these applications are regularising the work so far and for the works that aren't yet completed. So the proposal is to split see on front elevation into two residences by removing the link in between them. So part on the right hand side is to be 1970s brick extension, and obviously we've got the original building, in 19th century building. So the notice statement has been submitted. There isn't any original plan for it or been submitted. But you will see in that notice statement. So we've got some earlier phase 1, phase 2, thought to be late 16th to 17th century. Same with phase 2. And then this front building was thought to be constructed, and then won't be modern 1970s, 1980s, 90s were constructed, the blue patching. And there is what looks to be a Victorian element as well. That hasn't been picked up, but yeah, just to make you aware. So it's quite an interesting building itself. Here's a photograph from the back of the building, looking through to the church, where that modern extension on the side was constructed. And you can see the window and door openings as they once were. So obviously we've got front elevation, side elevation, showing these two elements being value. So you'll see showing the modern extension easy. So obviously this elevation remains on the whole unchanged. So at the moment this is the level of detail that we've got on the side elevation where those extensions being removed. But there are some windows being proposed, but no detail of what the form of those might be. So what I should mention is the levels are a little bit, a lot of straightened in terms of internal levels, and you can see in terms of this archway, there must be quite a substantial amount of banked up earth against the brickwork. And it's very clear to see as you look through that there's been quite a lot of land level changes in past, which probably aren't doing the building any favours. And I think the proposal is in due course to try and excavate those reinstate the original land levels. So, as usual, existing on the left-hand side, proposed on the right, that you've seen. So the extent of changes to the ground floor, there's a lost staircase being reinstated in this location. So blocking the doorways, the formation of the front doors, and obviously opening up, blocking off doorways that are no longer needed, and installing windows where they've been lost and they were actually links into the online solution. So here's the ground floor. As you can see, there's quite a few nice details. These are the repairs and the stone flat floor being installed. That's been installed on the ground floor hallway. So to go out to this building, and it was a former nursing home, so there was a lot of suspended ceilings and very handrails, of course, and although the work has been undertaken without permission, should obviously solve some of the works, just showing the outcome of some of the works. So to the first floor, once again, there's the installation of the rooms, looking at the doorway again. Here's a photograph on the left showing where they're proposing to reinstall or install the staircase that was when it was converted to a home, and the quality of the secondary stairs. Works look to have been started on the side elevation by putting in lintels, and so I just wanted to give you an update of things look like on site. Here's the second floor, so there's proposals for some changes to the layout in terms of providing a larger bathroom on the second floor. You will have seen there are sections through, and obviously the section plan shows you where things have been changed, and there are some window details that are quite general. So that's a shame.
Thanks, Chloe. So former nursing home, the intention is to create 2 new dwellings, one large one, one small one alongside, albeit separate. Comments, please.
I'll say something. I think it's, in a way, it allows the original vicarage to read as the house it was when it was built. I might point out though that the Fisher Jarman supplied a heritage statement written by a quantity surveyor, which doesn't know much about architecture. The house was built in 1828 by Joseph Parker, and the faculty is in existence at Lichfield's record office, and no reference to any form of documentation has been made. The 2.5-story part behind is part of the original vicarage, which faced east-west and was built in the 1770s. As you, being a 2.5-story piece, you'd expect that, and that was reduced to a service wing when the Regency Park was added for a rather well-off vicar who decided to upgrade the place. And there is, as they say, a 17th century remnant at the back. And I must say, I think that the pavilion added by the people who turned it into a care home to the on the east side of the house was actually about the most tactful extension to a Regency villa I've seen for a long time. So I hope it'll look just as convincing when it's lost its link. But I mean, I think otherwise it's a great idea, but it's a shame that nobody was supplied with any adequate information about the building. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Other comments?
On the new entrance, just really picking up on what Max said, the existing separation of the two buildings is great. The facades, the right-hand facade, the modern one, is clearly subordinate to the older one, but the symmetry and balance of that new elevation is going to be disturbed somewhat by the introduction of a door to the right-hand lower window. There is an entrance to the side, which could easily be reutilised, but that would maintain. Yeah, that's right. So it's the bottom right-hand set of French doors.
Bottom left image, bottom.
Yeah, the bottom left
Right-hand
image,
side.
but it's sorry, it's on the elevation at the bottom. So I think we'd just ask them if we can rejig that a little bit, keep that rather nice balance on there. The window details, reinstating the windows down that elevation, which has been blank, I think is a splendid idea. Need to see more detail on that. The window section they put in gives us the detail of the window in terms of section, but it doesn't actually give us the pattern of the window, because one of those windows is quite a large panel. So we really want to see what that looks like. But generally, I think it should come out as quite a successful scheme, and I'm pleased that they're exposing a lot of the original detail and refurbishing that.
Any other comments?
I'm quite spot.
Okay, well, thanks all for those comments. So that's a no objection. Lindsay got some observations on the heritage statement. Could be fuller and more accurate. And I think in general, we support the principle of actually creating the separation and opening up that view again to the church, sort of improving the reading of the former vicarage with the church itself. Perhaps a little cautionary note about boundary treatments to make sure that they don't sort of encroach into that space to make these two dwellings entirely separate. But and the point was made about retaining the entrance at the side of the secondary building so as not to disrupt the symmetry of the existing composition. No objection on that basis.
So just comment about the issue that Zoe raised about level.
Yes.
Where it's been fair, but it's not. Perhaps that's some consideration. There was something at the back of the newer building. They seem to be introducing sort of retaining.
Yeah, I mean, these things can be discussed, I guess, with yourself, Clay, can't they?
Keep going.
On the floor plans. So
There, you see this, the red lines to the view. Retaining. It just highlights the issue using grade.
Yeah.
The need to just consider bringing it back to the ground level. Against. Is that
That's an enclosure to provide a crossing for that particular dwelling.
At a higher level.
Quite right. And the levels, there's quite a big difference.
Yeah, you can see.
Yeah, and you probably do need more information on it's being supplied. And also on the boundary treatments.
Yes,
This would be a good opportunity to sort out.
Yes.
You know, mistakes that have been made in the past with leading material against or.
Yeah. Let's suggest that Chloe goes back then and has that discussion.
Yeah, just
Seeks.
so suggestion we put that little note in.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Got that, Lizzie? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I'm new, so I've been reflecting.
No, go for it. Yeah,
I do agree that by getting rid of that link, it's better for the original building. But then when you look at what's been left over, it actually looks a bit odd, unbalanced. Almost, would you, supposing they were to come to us and say, could you build something of this scale and size just there that looked like that, you'd probably go, oh, that looks a bit odd. But when it's actually connected to the building, it looks fine, or it looks okay. I mean, I don't think it's enough to stop it. I just thought it just.
I see your point. Max said it was a successful scheme, really. And the link,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
the link is set back, to help. I suppose now people would do a glazed link between the buildings, wouldn't they? You know.
Yes. You're right, it's very clearly subservient, isn't it? Yes, it does.
It's suddenly
does
slightly
change the
imbalanced, but I don't think it's enough to stop it.
You might want to come along and build an identical one the other side.
Yeah.
We can't refuse that.
Okay, thank you.
With symmetry.
We'll leave that one there. Thanks. Chloe, that takes us on to the last scheme for application. Derby Business College. St Peter's Church.
Application to Derby Business College or St Peter's Churchyard. It's changing use from offices to 6 flats in multiple occupation with a total of 58 bedrooms, together with external alterations to include roof alterations, installation of new windows, light well, and alterations to front elevation. Seen all of this information online. So it's just identifying the building, and there are a number of extensions and links between this former Methodist church and an industrial building to the rear, which you can see top right on the left side of the street. So you've got the existing and proposed plans here just to explain what's been proposed. So there are 2 additional windows on the side elevation. And then further back, there's a sort of a link building, which where there's a couple of windows, a larger window, and we're proposing 9 windows, and then the former industrial building look to be assigned on details on the existing plan, which is quite tricky to see when you're on site, and an additional 9 windows. So the front elevation, the proposal is to retain the extension in the front. We're looking at repairing it and painting it. The new black timber fascia, black timber column and face board will be building. This is going to shop front, new lighting, and around lighting, and new bricks with dark grey mortar to the side of the buildings. To the side, new windows proposed, and a partial blocking of one of the two of the windows, if you can see. And that's the proposed low level hinged casements. Casement windows. Along the bottom. So we've got this sort of block, which is this one. So currently, this link is 2 stories, and their products to be knitted on the black wall and removing the existing proportion windows, installing a new one on the ground floor, and those smaller windows above. So this elevation removing actually set back from this churchyard, which is in the photographs, removing the shop front and installing larger windows on the ground floor, and then 2 lots above, and then installing the floor in these buildings. Just some photographs just showing those elements which they're mentioning at the moment. This also, the view to the rear of the building is obscured. This angle looking to it, and it's obscured from the that way. So, but you can get clear views through from front. So you've seen the ground floor plan. To still building with units. First floor plan, installing the new another floor within that building to the back, retaining communal area over the ground floor and first floor, and then second floor plan, so converting the existing second floor.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. So quite a lot going on there. This building's tucked away at the back of St Peter's Churchyard. It's not listed, but it's in the conservation area. And as you pointed out, Chloe, that the extension to the front, I think, will remain as part of these proposals. Hopefully been through the changes. So comments, please. Just go first, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, some elements. Quite like. I don't think the proposed treatment, the extension from this is all successful. They propose to have black bricks and black mortar where there are windows there. I think it's going to be a detrimental change, really, but I think they could do something. It's a bit of a superficial thing that they're doing, and even though it is superficial, it's sort of detrimental, really. I'm not sure how it's going to work, really. So I think that from section area before.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, the extension to the front. I mean, I would dearly like to see this building brought back to some sort of composition that it respects the facade of the old church behind. That doesn't seem to be happening with this scheme, which is disappointing. I have great reservations about portions of the windows and the addition of windows. The extensions to the rear over first and second floor. It just is a poorly conceived scheme. The little windows that copper type windows that are going beneath the tall arch top windows down the side, which face onto a car park. So be obscured by cars and no doubt get exhaust fumes, etc. in there, because that, I believe, is being retained as car parking. There is no amenity space for the building either, which is also concerned as a planning issue, not necessarily a conservation issue. I just feel that it could be really quite a good scheme, but it's not.
I don't know whether 58 bedrooms in that part of town is too many. I think it's a good idea to have city centre to living, but I worry about the size of the rooms and the amount for that area at St Peter's Church. And looks crammed in somehow. You know, I imagine me if I wanted to live there. It looks like a rabbit. Geez, claustrophobic.
Yeah, it's only 6 flats, but as you say, 58 rooms.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot, isn't it?
Cluster arrangement, isn't it?
You have to bear in mind also that there is listed buildings both in front and to the side, and the scheme that we considered previously for the pop-up market area in between, it is all going to be affected by the usage of this building and the appearance.
You know, I'd agree with Paul. I mean, it'd be lovely to get that sort of conservatory off the front, which I think was put on by Raymond's news agency in the 70s to display their expertise. But I can't see how you could get the applicants might want to lose that space.
Well, it's not actually being used in part of
No.
the scheme, apart from the ground floor where they've got bike stores and bin stores.
It'd be wonderful if you could do a trade-off somehow,
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed.
because I think the facade's probably intact on behind it. 1818 facade.
Well,
I
it
don't think it have a
is.
beneficial impact on the conservation area, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, actually, yes.
Can we suggest that there's a missed opportunity here to deal with that? Pointed out the very small, feels very over intense with about site. Potentially poor quality. Perhaps more planning. So I think it would have an impact on the area, wouldn't it?
Most definitely, yeah.
Yeah, just trying to read the room. So are we objecting, or is this no objection with an advisory?
I would say it's an objection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an opportunity to
Yeah.
have this on.
Hopefully.
It's a trade-off, you know, quite important, isn't it? For me, if that front area could be much improved, in terms of town scale.
Yeah.
Fantastic, and if it meant having a bit more building elsewhere on the side in terms of stories or massive, trade-off is probably the right word.
There is a scheme in there, but it just
Yeah.
needs handling very carefully.
Yeah.
Not good enough, see me.
Yeah. Okay.
Red pen.
Thank you for that. So that's an objection, and obviously I'll talk to Chloe at this about seeing what they can do to enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area.
Yeah.
And we think there is perhaps a more thoughtful scheme in there. Whilst we support the principle of city living and all of that, but object on that basis. Lindsay, go with that. Thank you. I seem to have lost my agenda. So that concludes all the applications as such. The next item on the agenda is the city centre vibrancy. So Chloe's going to give us the heads up. You've seen the papers on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just ask Chloe talk us through that briefly? This is really by way of an update and
Yeah, I think
briefing for us all.
yeah, I think so. It was just to make you aware that there has been city centre financial fund. Just wanted to let you know about the project aims and context for the individual artist delivering items within the city centre. So just wanted to make you aware of the project. Obviously, the team that are delivering it are checking to see whether planning commission and this film centre are needed now. So I've outlined in the report just general information about the fund and why it's there. And obviously there are a couple of types of projects which are creating interventions by local artists into the fabric of the city. Form of decorative hoardings, painted buildings, window treatments based on walls, and installations. And there's also a street camping. So although this fund is now closed, the budget is fully allocated, and there's no further to thought rounds of funding for further projects. I just thought as these things have cropped up, it was important to just let you know what the context to them were, and a little bit more information. So that's the reason why we're bringing this today. So there are 10 projects which were selected to develop their ideas further by that project team. 4 projects have been completed. 2 are in development but awaiting permissions. 2 projects are on hold until locations can be identified, and another 2 proved to be undeliverable. So, in some of which you will have seen already. So there is the Bold Lane mural on the left-hand side, next to Electric Daisy site. Then there's the Iron Gate mural, which obviously in conservation on the centre. And there in the background in this document of who the artist is and what the design is related to. This design is celebrating the King of Rome and the building history of Scottish music. And the one on the left with a specific artist and project also. There's stories of Iron Gate, so some terms of it was the ribbon canopy which was conceived and developed with a particular artist, celebrating diversity and allowing over the summer. Some future projects which are being looked at, and that's one the satellite festoon lighting. It's being led by businesses down there, and obviously it's going to require permission from landlords to attach fixing points to buildings. Saying in the document that conservation options that include and exclude a list of buildings, and the conservation city council contact will be consulted and planning application list of building consent applications apply or where required. And the other one is a project being led by another artist, where the works are probably so people can take pictures of themselves in front of the things. So that's a bit of a background to that lab. And then everything else is within the report itself. There is one that seems to have happened on Sadler Gate, And the owners are in the process of being written to ask for this to building consent. You know, spotted it. And that's been installed already. But there is a formal process now of discussion, and so the commissions will be sorting plans and everything.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. That's just to update you, really. I mean, that's what we need.
Interestingly, we were looking at a building earlier, which had a big blank rendered facade on it. Guarantee you, we would never get a consensus of what would be appropriate to put on the side of the great teaching on this.
Okay, thank you. Next item, Chloe, is the guidance on heritage statements. You're very welcome. Much of our discussion, so
Yeah. Well, I've been just looking at time now. Obviously, it's submitted quite early. So, and obviously there is the Historic England guidance on heritage statements and significance. But it's thought that there's probably a need for something which assists individual applicants and all agents to sort of try and for them to know more clearly what's expected and what's needed. So this is a first, this is a draft. So in response to you sending this out for this meeting, we have had a couple of comments. One from Chris Wardle, who isn't obviously with us today. He specifically suggested that actually going straight to the HER would be better than going to the Heritage Gateway, as it's not particularly used. So it was good to see what your thoughts are as well. So I think that's probably one thing. And I also consulted the archaeological, the county archaeologists who are archaeological advisors, and not only did we reinforce that in terms of the HER, there are also things which could include, which is when to get professional input, which I think is also a really good point, and also to perhaps look at an archaeological sense part of this document as well, because very often, a good idea to have a section on that as well. But as I said, it is a start. So if there's anything else that you think we need to cover, this is something that can be sent out to agents or applicants or be found on the website eventually. Please let me know.
I just had two comments. Well, three. First of all, this is a very important document, and congratulations on drafting out what would be a very beneficial send out to people. But the two points that I got in mind were that we say in the final and third page, where conservation area grades on conservation area management plans have been prepared by the council. I think we ought to say where. It's more so rather than just say, well, where there is one. Why don't we just tell them where there is one?
Right.
Yeah, you could list them out. There is one for,
You could listen.
Yes,
this area, this area, and this area, and these are still under preparation, awaiting staffing results.
That's a good idea. We could even provide the link.
Because otherwise, yes, that's it. Yeah, that's answer your own question. And then the other point is I just felt the justification statement is treated in a bit of a disjointed way, really, because you've got on near the top of page 2 reference to justification statement, and then at the very final paragraph, third reference to justification statement, that they're saying different things. You know, should it all be in one place?
I think it was going through the components.
Yes, I understood why, but I'm not sure it works. Yeah, I think it would work better if it was dealt with in one place. And said the same thing.
Okay, any other comments or observations?
I welcome the doc.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you also say
Just one last thing. There is a thought that if capacity allows to actually take it a step further and do a tick chart, because obviously it sounds like it's but you know, for different types of heritage assets, so the approach might be slightly different for something the conservation area still doing. So it might go that, but that's just really to assist the foundation to
yeah, I mean, it ought to be proportionate. No, thank you. I think on behalf of the committee, thanks very much for putting them together. I think really helpful, practical guidance. It makes it very clear the importance to, first of all, understand the context that you're working in. Secondly, assess the significance of heritage assets in that context.
Yeah.
And thirdly, look at the impact that your intervention will have on those, and justify that quite clearly. So I think those steps are well worth reiterating. So thanks for that. That's the last item on the agenda, but there is one more.
No, the meeting is meeting finished.
Oh, stop recording now. Are we?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay.